Hey everyone, so today we are going to be talking about the book Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, and in my opinion this is a true work of art because it really touches on the behavioral aspect of finance and just the nature of money. In my opinion, it's probably one of the best books ever written in the finance and investing space, and that's not an overstatement. There was not a single page in this book where I wasn't excited to read what's coming up next. So here are my 10 lessons learned in this book, summarized in a way that helps you better understand what this book is all about, that will help you in your financial journey as well. Now, to start, Morgan talks about the nature of finance. He says, through years of advanced technologies and innovation, we have learned to become better and more skilled farmers, doctors, surgeons, chemists, plumbers, engineers, you name it, but not at investing or personal finance. And why is that? And that's because other disciplines, for example, physics, it's guided by specific rules and laws. But finance is different. Finance and investing has more to do with people's behavior and less to do with specific rules or laws. And today, unfortunately, money is taught like physics, very much with rules and laws, and not enough like the psychology of our emotions. And as Voltaire once said, history never repeats itself, man always does. Now, this quote is so powerful because it explains the simple idea that we as humans, we have emotions, right? Our emotions dictate our behavior, which dictates how we live. So Morgan starts by saying that no one is crazy. And what he means by that is that it's all about perception. When it comes to money, what may seem crazy to you may make perfect sense to me. And what may seem absolutely crazy to me may make perfect sense to you. And that's because growing up, we all have different perspective, different unique experiences when it comes to money. So when it comes to finance and money, there's no right or wrong, only what works for you. And what works for you is guided by how you personally view money, which depends on your personal experiences. And when we really think about it, we have a world full of 8 billion people. And these are people raised by different generations, raised by different parents, who earned different incomes, had different values of different parts of the world, born into different economies, experiencing different job markets with different incentives, different degrees of luck. And so there's no question that we all learn very different lessons when it comes to money. And so everyone has their own unique perspective of how the world works. And Morgan gives us a very simple example of people who were born in the 1970s, experienced the stock market increase by 1,000% and had absolutely amazing returns, versus people who were born in the 1950s, who mostly experience the market trade sideways and go nowhere. Two groups of people separated by chance of their birth year had to go through life with completely different views on how the stock market works. And the important takeaway here is that it's all about perception. So different experiences can lead to vastly different views, and every decision people make with the money is justified by taking into the information that they have at that moment. Another concept which Morgan talks about, which I have mentioned this in our main money investing channel and resonated with me so much, is that we can't recreate past experiences because different experiences lead to vastly different perceptions about money. It's also very difficult to recreate these experiences to begin with. And that is to say that I can sit here and read all about the Great Depression and what it was like to lose everything during the Great Depression. I can analyze the situation in hindsight, but I can't replicate the emotional scars of those who actually experienced it. People born today will never experience the emotions felt during the depths of the global pandemic, a pandemic which affected over 7 million people and shut down the entire world for a few months. And there's also a very famous quote from Maya Angelou, which goes something like, "People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And I think that's also true with experiences, because as humans, we can forget what was said or done during a certain time, but we will never forget how we felt during that time. And so we can't experience something until we actually experience it. Morgan does a really good job in analyzing the role of luck and risk in our lives. And he says, because we live in such a complex world with so many moving parts and different variables, it's almost impossible for 100% of our outcomes to be tied back to 100% of our actions. And what he means by that is that every outcome in our life is not just dependent on our effort or things we control, but it is also guided by things we don't control. And that's where the luck and the risk comes in. And we have to understand that luck plays a significant role in people's success. And when we look at the most successful people in history, we overlook the role or the idea of how lucky they were to be at the right place at the right time. Now, Morgan also shares an example of Bill Gates, who founded Microsoft after going to Lakeside High School, and it was one of the only high schools with a computer back in the US during that time. And in fact, the computer was more powerful, more advanced than some of the colleges back then as well. Now, this is not to say that Bill Gates didn't work hard or wasn't smart or talented, because he was. All those things were true, plus he was lucky. Morgan emphasizes on the point that luck plays a huge role in people's success and risk plays a huge role in people's failure. And it is for that very reason we need to focus less on specific individual stories like how do I become more like Elon Musk or how do I be the next Bill Gates, and more on the general broader patterns of success. Because luck is not something that we can consistently replicate, but we can replicate our effort and focus more on the broader trends, broader patterns of success. Now, perhaps the most important lesson I learned from this book, which honestly has brought me so much peace, is the idea of enough. And Morgan talks about how we as humans are in this constant search for more. We always are striving for more money, more power, more prestige, more freedom. We can go on and on. But at some point, we have to ask ourselves the simple question of, when do we have enough? And Morgan says, knowing when enough is the true secret to actually living a fulfilling financial life. And the crazy part is that there are many people in the world who had more than enough money, yet they risked it all to get just a little bit more. He gives examples of celebrities and even Bernie Madoff or Rajat Gupta who were worth hundreds of millions of dollars and yet ended up in prison for committing fraud, insider trading, or even running Ponzi schemes because of this never-ending pursuit of getting a little bit more. Why? I mean, and what's the point? And Morgan says there are some things in life that are just not worth the risk. These are your freedom, your reputation, your family and friends, and your health. Morgan also says that social comparison is also why we are constantly wanting more things. Because again, if you can go on Instagram, you can see all other people living their best life with the fancy car, with the new watch, with the bigger houses. And this constant comparison is what drives this pursuit of more. So the hardest skill is getting the goalpost to stop moving in the first place. And I want to clarify that this idea of enough is not about being conservative or leaving opportunities or potential on the table. We still need to be ambitious, but this idea of enough is learning how to be content with what we have, being grateful, and also understanding that having enough is a gift not worth risking. Now, Albert Einstein once said that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. And rightly so, because Morgan shares a very simple example of how much of Warren Buffett's net worth was accumulated after the age of 50. And the numbers are absolutely mind-boggling. But as of 2020, Warren Buffett's net worth was almost $85 billion. And of that $85 billion, over $84.1 billion was accumulated after he turned 50 years old. Just think about that for a second. 99% of his net worth was accumulated after the age of 50. And one of my favorite lines in the books are, Warren Buffett's skill is investing, but his secret is time. Now, compounding works wonders over several decades. Buffett has been doing this for over 60 years. His longevity is the real secret to his compounding gains. So Morgan encourages us to be patient and let compound interest work wonders over several years. Okay, so now that we're wealthy after the compound interest, we've made our money, we're rich. The question is, can we keep it? Morgan talks about the difference between getting wealthy and staying wealthy. Now, these are two very different things, and they require very different sets of skills. And Morgan says that there are hundreds, perhaps even millions of ways to actually make money, but there's only one way to stay wealthy, and that is a combination of both paranoia and frugality. And this one resonated with me so much because growing up, I've always been very frugal. In fact, I've been very conscious about the way I spend my money. And I think most people, what happens is when incomes go up, so does spending. Most people have their income and spending positively correlated, meaning if income goes up, their spending also goes up. So if someone gets a raise at work, let's just get the new car. If somebody gets a bonus for their job, let's just get the new watch or go on this vacation. So both income and spending tend to be very positively correlated when it comes to personal finance. And Morgan says that the secret to staying wealthy is absolute survival. With survival, we also give ourselves the opportunity to stay in the game for when the odds are in our favor so we can take advantage of many opportunities. He also talks about, and which was very interesting, is that we constantly learn about what Warren Buffett did to succeed at investing and become wealthy, but we are never told the things that Warren Buffett didn't do. And this was such an amazing angle to look at his investing career. And the things that he didn't do during the 60 years were that he didn't get carried away by debt. He didn't panic and sell during the 14 recessions that he's lived through. He didn't compromise his business reputation. He didn't attach himself to one strategy or one worldview or one passing trend. And he didn't burn himself out or quit or retire. Survival gave him the longevity that he needed in order to compound. So remember, getting wealthy and staying wealthy are two completely different things and require completely different skill sets. And staying wealthy is all about developing a survival mindset, not getting carried away by overspending or over leveraging yourself, and being able to be conscious with your spending. Now, when it comes to money, the only two variables that we actually control are spending and saving. Our income is determined by our skill set and the jobs marketplace. Our investing returns are determined by the market, but the two variables that we have full control over are how much we spend and how much we save. And we just talked about spending, but let's just talk about saving. And Morgan says to just save. There's a whole chapter dedicated to telling you and encouraging you to save. And he says there doesn't need to be a reason to actually save, just save to save. And a high savings rate is actually going to help us in our pursuit to getting freedom. And by freedom, he's more specifically talking about time freedom, because time and money go hand in hand. We're constantly trading our time for money when we go at a job, when we go do our business. Whatever it is, we are trading our time for money. And the difference between these two is that money can be earned, but time, once it's gone, it is literally gone. And this has completely changed my behavior and how I choose to spend my time. Now, because we are constantly trading time for money, the higher our savings are, the more time we give our future self. And it's really just giving us the flexibility to switch careers if we need to, switch jobs, wait for the right opportunities, and that control over our time is an unseen return on wealth and probably the biggest dividend the money can give us. And Morgan says one of the most fulfilling and wealthy things is to wake up and literally say that I can do whatever I want. And there was in fact a study which concluded that as humans, having control over our time is what makes us truly happy. In the book 30 Lessons for a Living, Carl Pilliger interviewed thousands of elderly Americans looking for important lessons through decades of life experience. And believe it or not, but not a single person said that to be happy, you should try to work as hard as possible, make as much money as possible to buy things you want. What these people did value were the quality friendships, the quality time, unstructured time spent with your loved ones, with your children. Those are the things are of more value than, of course, burning yourself out, trading your time for money in order to buy things that you don't really need. Now, because frugality is a trait that is needed for staying wealthy, it becomes obvious that wealth is not what we see. Wealth is hidden, right? Wealth is what we don't see. Morgan talks about this in chapter 9, where we often forget that most people driving the nice cars, wearing the luxury watches, or living in the bigger houses are the ones who took on debt to service that lifestyle. And that's because we judge by what we see, and what we see are those nice things and not the debt. We automatically think that they've made it or, they're wealthy. But the truth is that wealth is what we don't see. Real wealth is the nice cars or the houses not purchased, the expensive clothes not purchased. And basically, Morgan says that real wealth is the financial assets that haven't yet been converted into the luxury stuff that we constantly see. And Morgan says that when most people say that they want to be a millionaire, what they really mean is that they want to spend $1 million, which is literally the opposite of being a millionaire. And this also reminds me of a quote from Warren Buffett himself when he said, if you buy things you don't need, soon you will sell things that you do need. Now, Morgan also talks about the difference between rich and being wealthy. He says rich is the current income and wealthy is the accumulation of that income not spent. Now, the book also encourages us to think twice before buying flashy things, because when we buy expensive stuff to impress those around us, the truth is people are hardly impressed by materialistic things. Morgan says that if instead we are truly seeking respect and admiration, then humility, kindness, and empathy will bring us more respect than fancy things ever will. And remember, the world is filled with people who look modest but are wealthy, and people who look wealthy but are broke. And the book Millionaire Next Door talks about this concept in more detail. Now let's talk about life. Our life is full of surprises. In fact, the world is full of surprises. And as we know that the future is incredibly unpredictable and uncertain, Morgan says that the cornerstone of economics is that things change over time. In fact, the only constant is change. So when we plan for the future, we plan based on the things that we think could happen based on what we know. But the interesting thing is that we don't know what the future holds. Nobody does. So the truth is that we can't plan for what we can't envision. And that's because we don't know what we don't know. So when we fail, it's not because of our failure of analysis, but because of our failure of imagination. And Morgan talks a lot about history in this book, and he even talks about the events that actually move the needle. In other words, things that actually impact our lives the most are events that nobody can predict or envision. So the best way to fix this situation is to plan for your plan not going according to plan. And having a margin of safety, and in this book he refers to this as the room for error, in our analysis, and not depending heavily on a single thing, which could be like a single career or a single investment or one plan, because that creates a single point of failure. And if that one thing fails, we are done. We are in financial ruin. So you want to avoid single points of failure. And we want to focus on creating a plan for your plan not going according to the plan, while also understanding that the only constant is change. Now, Morgan also says to be more reasonable and less rational. And what that means is that when it comes to investing, rational thinking is to do what actually makes sense. But we as human beings, we have emotions, right? What makes sense on paper or on a spreadsheet may not make sense in real life. For example, the long-standing belief is that to never have cash in the bank because over time it will be worth less due to inflation, so that money should be invested to earn a higher rate of return. Completely rational. But what Morgan is suggesting is that, hey, if you feel more comfortable having that cash in the bank account so that it helps you sleep at night and you don't want to risk that money through market volatility and the loss potential that it carries, that's totally reasonable. And as discussed earlier, there's no right or wrong answer when it comes to money, only what works for you. And it's really you decide what to do with your money. And sometimes the more rational thing may not be the more reasonable thing to do. And that's completely okay. And a good indicator, Morgan says, is to figure out whether it helps you sleep, right? It doesn't matter if you found the best investment in the world, you found the stock that's going to 10x in the next year or something, and you decide to invest all your life savings into this one stock. But regardless of your confidence, if this investment affects your sleep, there's your answer. Maybe cut back on the investment amount until you feel more comfortable, and that's the idea of being more reasonable and less rational. And finally, we have to remember that everything we do in life has a price. Morgan talks about this as being the price of admission. And the price is either our time, our money, opportunity, or our emotions. For example, we buy a cup of coffee, the price is literally the price. We help our family with something, the price is our time. We invest in the stock market, the price is the potential loss or the volatility with the market, and that's our feelings and our emotions. We save cash and keep it in the bank. The price is opportunity. We need to weigh the price with the potential reward before making decisions. And the book really emphasizes on this point that invest for the long term is sound advice, but very difficult and hard to follow in real life. And that is because successful investing demands a price, and that price is years of volatility, market drawdowns, fear, uncertainty about the future, and regret. And all these things are easily overlooked when it comes to dealing with them in the real world and just dealing with them in real time. So we really have to identify what price are we paying for the potential reward and weigh against those options. And Morgan says that the bottom line is that no reward is ever free, and market returns are never free and they never will be. They demand you pay the price like any other product, and we're not forced to pay that price. I mean, we can keep our money in cash or save bonds, but then our price is the missed opportunities. Now, Morgan also reminds us that everyone is playing a different game, and just like everyone has different perspectives on money based on their past experiences, everyone also has different goals and objectives. And we can't judge ourselves based on someone else who might be playing a completely different game. In the world of finance and investing, everyone has different goals, different time horizons, risk tolerances, financial objectives, liquidity needs, and the list goes on and on. We can't possibly compare two market participants and expect them to behave the same way because they all have different experiences and different financial goals. So identify and understand the game that you're playing, focus on that game, be reasonable, and be ready to pay the price. Now, the book has a few more lessons, but the video is just getting way too long. But there you have it. Those are the 10 important lessons from, in my opinion, one of the best finance books ever written, Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. I will see you all in the next video.